I think James, to be honest with you, that's one of the scariest parts about getting older is I still want to be relevant. You know, with my job, I take my job now really seriously at Motor America because I want to be part of the reason why the sport gets good again. You know, I remember when it was good. I remember when guys like you were getting paid a lot of money to ride, and deservingly so. And people go, "Oh, it's never going to get back there." And I still hold out hope that it does. And I think that the series has gotten better. But to your point, it's why I still ride the way I do. And there are times when I get to ride really cool stuff. Like this year, I got to ride some really neat stuff. And I want to stay relevant. I want the kids that were even like junior cup. I had a couple of them come up to me this year, and they're like, oh, we didn't know you're still racing." I'm like, "I'm not. I just kind of put my feet back in the water for a minute, you know." But it was really cool because it let them see that the person that's in the booth is trying to stay somewhat relevant. I did that practice day at Thursday, and it's like all the nerves are there, and I sit there and I think to myself, "What am I doing? You know, like this is stupid." Like,
And then you go put it P6.
and I was doing
I
okay,
know.
and I found myself
I
not
know.
doing
I
too
know.
bad, right? And
I know.
and it was
And
great. Like the comments I got from certain, like Sean Dillon Kelly wrote me something really cool, and who I really like. I really like his whole story, and him and about four other guys were like, "JP, you're like ripping," and I'm like, didn't really feel like it, but I had fun. And Stamboli has always been so amazing to me. Like we've got a really neat bond, me and Richard, because we kind of started to feel some success at the same time together, and I think that's kind of stayed with us for a long time. But bikes have changed a lot. I rode my dad's super bike. I got an opportunity to ride my dad's championship winning super bike 12 years after he won. So it would have been like 91 or 92 at Loudon, New Hampshire. This guy showed up and they were doing like these parade laps. And Scott Russell was the champion then, or he was riding it was a Kawasaki thing. And I remember getting on that bike and thinking to myself, how did they race these things?
well, how much like horsepower did they have at that
I,
time?
they, I
Did
think,
you?
I think they had 120, 130 horsepower, maybe 140, maybe,
Okay.
maybe not as much as that, but they were heavy. Bars were wide. So you had, you just had, there was a lot of ground clearance was probably like what you ride or were, you know, now that you guys have factory Harley super bikes, you know, they're not exactly the road glides that we're riding down the street, you know, but yeah, they were big, they were heavy, they were cumbersome, and yeah, and the bars were. I just remember getting on the thing, and the bars were out here, and I was thinking this could get me in trouble. And then what's great is that it had the same tires on it that my dad had ridden on. They were 12 years old, and it started sprinkling, and I'm like, what
Dude,
is
what are you
this?
doing?
Yeah, what am I doing?
Nuts.
Another
That's
But they were
crazy.
just parade laps. They were. I
Yeah.
didn't ever get to go out and really ride it. They were just parade
How did
laps.
it feel like? Was it
Really slow on the throttle. I remember that like it was stiff throttle, like it wasn't like easy. And I just remember thinking to myself, man, can you imagine like 30 of these bikes, 40 of these bikes on the grid racing against each other? It's like, whew, yeah, not for me. But that's the thing. Tires have gotten better. Bikes have gotten better. I've been able to follow that sort of evolution of what they've come into. I was there for the fuel injection when they very first started. The first fuel injected bike I ever rode was Matt Mladen's Superbike. He was off. I think he was getting married, and Yosh had asked me if I would come and test it at Laguna. So I rode this bike, and I'd broken my wrist 3 months before. And when they asked me, my wrist was in plaster, and it was messed up. And they called me and said, "Hey, can you ride this bike in like 4 weeks?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. Didn't tell anybody. And I ended up getting the cast cut off like a week prior, and I went up to Laguna. And the thing I remember the most is the fuel injection would always cut out in left-handers. And think about Laguna. So I'd be coming down through Rainy Corner, and it would cut out, and it would all the way it would go to my left wrist. And I'm like, oh man, yeah. But I remember being there for all that. It was cool.